So this is essentially that finished cabinet. I haven't finalized attaching the fronts just because there's going to be a glaze that goes on this, and I'm only going to put the glaze on the front of the cabinet, so I'm probably going to pop them back off to put that glaze on. That also means the reveals aren't finalized as well because I haven't fine-tuned the drawer slides. When I took the drawer slides out, I didn't number them, so they went back in unevenly. So all the fine-tuning I had done before kind of got thrown off, but I could line all of that back up. But this is basically it. The glaze that will go on it will make the color look a little less severe. It kind of mutes the color a little bit and gives it just like a nice final look. I'm happy with the way the wheels are still on the piece, but fairly hidden underneath. It moves nicely. It was just kind of a very basic, straightforward cabinet build. Now, unless she gives me final photos, I probably will not have final photos of the granite on top, but a piece of granite will go on top of this and slide right underneath of her island. So in this video, I'm going to cover the fine details, putting the wheels on, as well as the layers of paint that went on here. So like the rest of this build, the molding matches an existing piece of furniture, and it's kind of a two-beaded molding. So what I did was I decided to just buy a triple beaded molding from Lowe's and trim out that middle piece, so I didn't have to make my own molding. So I'm just cutting very shallow curves into the center portion of this molding to remove it, and I'll be left with the two beaded edges on the side. It was a quick way to make a bunch of this molding, like I said, without having to plane up stock and make my own. I could sand that inner portion once it was done. So the bottom portion of the curve at this point hadn't been finalized by the customer, so you could see I'd have the two edge pieces just taped in place. But with those taped in place, I could put the middle sections on. It's just going to rest right on top of that poplar, and then this whole thing's going to be painted one piece. And with those pieces in place, I could just add them. I also put two pieces of beading in the back to hide the seams in my panel. You'll see that I think towards the end of the video. And like I said, it was just to hide my seam and also kind of pull some of that detailing into the back of the cabinet. And this bottom piece also has to be taped into place so that I could cut out the shape on the bottom. And then this is footage from the last video, but this is actually when it happened in real time, putting those drawers in. So to add the wheels, I had to cut slits out of the back of the cabinet. This wasn't ideal, but she wanted it to lock because I believe she's going to be using this top for baking. So rolling out dough and whatnot, you'll need the wheels to lock. So I started by just drilling a series of holes in the back of the panel with where the lock on the wheel hit the back of the panel, kind of making a mortise. I had a little bit of tear out on the back side of the piece, but I could fill it in because this is going to be painted. And then I ended up having to remove the material all the way down to where the poplar meets the frame. This was kind of a process of trial and error, and that's how much room I needed in order to gauge the locking mechanism on the wheels. But once I had that cut out, I could then align all of them. I tested the ones in the front so that they could swivel enough. The front wheels were actually locking wheels as well, but I took the locking mechanism off so that I could use, could have them closer to the front of the cabinet because the locking mechanism would have made them have to be set further back. Just attach these with washers and some screws. So like any sort of movable object, it's kind of ideal to have the two wheels in back locked into place. They're actually swivel wheels, but since I have them peeking through the back side of the cabinet, they're now straight wheels, and the front wheels can turn and swivel. So I couldn't test this out on my floor because my floor is not even, but you could see how when you're moving this around, it has a nice movement to it. These wheels are nice wheels. They're not the cheap rubber kind. I forget exactly what type of rubber's on them, but they move very nicely. The bearings on them, the Lazy Susan sort of bearings on them are nice as well, and that's how everything looks
from the bottom. So I had sent this image to the customer and they liked the shape. I basically just kind of free formed this curve on there, and I wanted it set far enough away from the side of the cabinet that the wheels were still going to be a little bit hidden. So that's kind of what all these lines are for. I just used a series of curves to draw this up. So I was going to use my jigsaw to cut this out. And about halfway through cutting this out, I realized I'm cutting on the wrong side of my line. So I didn't refilm it, but I ended up having to redraw this thing on another piece of plywood. It wasn't that big of a deal, and recutting it out. This cut that I'm making here is incorrect. And then I don't believe I have footage of this, but once I fixed it and cut it out again, I edge banded the top and bottom of this with that glue adhesive edge banding both sides. You could do minor curves with that edge banding. So when I stopped with the bandsaw was when I realized I was cutting the wrong side, and then once I redid it, that's what it looks like. So I could take the drawer out and I could glue this in place now. So I still have that little bit of kind of an open mortise on the side, and then the front edge I could put glue on as well, and pop that panel into place. Once I had that in place, I could finally put my side molding on. So these are the same pieces. I'm keeping them long, and then at the top I'll trim them down to size. So I just attach these with glue and brads. And then I also don't believe I filmed this, but there's a little bit of putty I put around any sort of seam or marks of a seam, so that when I painted this, everything looked nice and seamless. So there's the back side, what it looks like with those locks. You could see it'll be easier to push them down with your foot, but they lock in place, and then you could just kick up on them as well. And that is how those are going to work. The cabinet really doesn't move when those two back wheels are locked. So I was using oil-based primer for this because I have a gallon of it from another project, and I decided to use it in my sprayer because if you can get a sprayer to work, it's a huge time saver. The sprayer I have, even though it's formulated for oil-based materials, it works best with stain, and that's about it. It doesn't work great with paint. So I kind of suffered through the first coat with it, and then the second coat I decided to put on with a roller. So I just cut in on the panel and can roll it on there. The only problem with the roller is I don't buy, and this is partially my fault, I don't buy really high-end rollers, so it does leave a little bit of a texture on the piece, and also some fuzzies in there off of the roller. I just went through and I put 2 coats of primer on this whole thing so that the top coat, I didn't have to put as much top coat on. The top coat matches her existing cabinets. So for the inside of the cabinets, I tried this Rust-Oleum Stain and Poly in 1. Usually I clear coat these, but I wanted to try something that gave it a little bit of color to it. I don't love the look of the clear coated inner cabinets, especially since I use plywood, so you can kind of see the plies on the edge of those dovetails. And I'm not a lover of one application products. They're usually not that great, but the inside of that cabinet actually turned out pretty good with that Rust-Oleum 1 coat, and since it was a white tint, it actually kind of gave it a nice finish. So I wouldn't use that on a final coat of a piece, but for the inside of cabinets it was kind of a nice time saver. And then this is the paint for the finished piece. This is Sherwin-Williams, and at this point, at least around by me, the coronavirus is taking more so of a hold than other parts of the country. So the Sherwin-Williams paint, a minor shout out to Sherwin-Williams, they actually stayed open with curbside pickup. So I ordered this outside the store, never actually went into the store, and they didn't have the quart I needed, so they gave me a gallon of it at the same price, which I thought was super nice, and I was able to keep working on this because otherwise I wouldn't have been able to, because it had to be a Sherwin-Williams paint. So I put 2 coats on this, and it was the same process. I would cut in and then roll on the rest. And
also, since I'm gonna pop the tops back off in order to put the glaze on, I haven't final attached them, which means I haven't finalized the reveals, so you might notice a little bit of changes. I don't really fine tune them until everything's finished. You can see the side, as well as the back, so with the wheels locked, this doesn't move, and then they pop up, and the whole thing can move. And trying not to touch it with my dirty boots, everything locks again in place.